morning. I really appreciate being here. Millie appreciates being here. We're happy that AAIMCo can be represented today. I have an unusual and fun leadership presentation for you. I hope it's something like you've never seen before. I hope it's something that will mean something to you and you can take something home that you'll use immediately. Most of the lessons that I'm going to be talking about today have come to me from an animal of some sort, and most of them are applicable at home as well as at work. So even if you don't use this stuff at your job, or when you're working with a client, or when you're working with employees, you probably can use it at home with a spouse. Something. The introduction to my book talks about why speed and leadership are at odds. I think this is important to discuss in every setting to sort of set the stage for what the book is about and what my talk is about. And the reason that I feel like it's important is because we are being so bombarded these days with speed. Everything has to be fast. Everything has to be 140 characters or less. That's Twitter. If you're not on Twitter, that's all you get on Twitter is 140 characters or less. Politicians are politicking on 20-second sound bites. We don't know enough about any of those candidates, in my opinion, because that's how they're presenting all of what they do and know. I think that speed puts a pressure on us that causes us to go faster than we should and think less than we should. We don't consider the moment because we don't have a moment. We have a second or two or 20 to make decisions. And I think that when you as consultants are out there talking to your clients, maybe it's a good idea to talk to them about that too. I know because I love the first page of our book where it talks about the 10 cents and the balance of the bill and the total of $10,000, because you know what? $9,999.90 is worth it to know which screw to tap on the machine that's broken. How many years did it take me to write the book? Somebody asked me. People ask me that all the time. Well, it took me a year to put the words on the page. It took me 30 years to know what to write. And I think it's the same idea. When you guys talk to your clients, they want a quick, easy answer. But there aren't any quick, easy answers, are they? There's really not. And the reason speed and leadership are at odds is because humans are humans. Frankly, we haven't evolved that much. We haven't. Think about it. In the time that we've been alive, we've gone to the moon, we've invented the computers, and now all of a sudden everything has to be in 140 characters or less. And I'm not bashing Twitter. I love it. I use it all the time. I'll be tweeting this afternoon from the airport about this conference. And hopefully have the little squirmy owl with me. He'll be in some of the pictures. But the point is that humans need more time to process things. And more important than that, we need time to build relationships with the humans around us. We don't look at somebody most of the time and build a relationship in a few seconds or a few minutes. Sometimes it takes years to build those relationships, to gain the trust between you and your client or your employee or AAIMCo or anybody else you're trying to build a relationship with. It takes time. Love at first sight is very rare. And that's love at first sight, not business relationships, right? So I think there's a difference, and I think that that's the reason we have so much trouble right now making young people understand, and it's probably the same reason we had trouble understanding when we were young, right? We talked about that last night. It just seems like we need to move fast in this world, but we have to find a way to blend that speed with the ability to build good relationships. Now, I don't know if you know my story about AAIMCo, but the real quick version is I started in this business in 1983 after graduating from college with 2 majors in 3 years. I was in a hurry to get out of school. Wasn't so smart maybe looking back, but that's what I did. And I worked in the industry as an underwriter, and I was a field rep, and I was a sales representative in an agency, a producing agent in an agency, and then I was the agency manager for a while in operations. I ran 9 departments. And then I got to FAIA, the Florida Association of Insurance Agents. I was vice president of education. I spent 11 years there. It was wonderful, great experience. And then I was a consultant for 4 years, like you guys. And then I got kind of tired of the travel, and Ermi called, and the ironic thing was Ermi called me to help with the question they had, and I was helping. I was answering a question from Paul Murray, and he said, how's it going? And I said, well, you know. He said, wait a minute, you might be available? Let's talk. So, the ironic thing about Ermi, though, is the owl. This is the funny story. This is the animal connection. This is actually not in the book. I have collected owls for decades. I have, how many do I have in my office, Millie? 40 or 50?
Go, easy.
The whole collection is now, of course, in my office at Ermi. And my grandmother is the reason that I collect owls. I actually started collecting them just not too long before she died, and partly because of a poem she used to say to me. And I think the poem has relevance to leadership skill. This poem goes back to about the mid-1850s. It was an English children's story or poem. And I think it teaches us a valuable lesson, and it's where I want to start. The poem goes like this. A wise old owl sat in an oak. The more he saw, the less he spoke. The less he spoke, the more he heard. Why can't we all be like that wise old bird? It's a great lesson in listening. Looking, absorbing what's around you, thinking about what you're doing first, and then speaking, which is a lesson I have to always constantly remind myself of. I'm a talker, so I have to think sometimes about what's coming out of my mouth and listen first. And we have to do that really well as consultants. I still feel like a consultant. I still feel like every day at Ermi, I'm in some ways their consultant. I'm trying to have that mindset and that attitude. Kind of in the same way I think of it as being an owner. You know, I try to own what I do. A lot of people say the way to be successful in business is to treat the business as if you owned it. Well, one of the things you have to do is listen. It's hard to do. Leaders, like ourselves, want to talk, preach, teach, tell, sell, right? We want to be the ones on stage a lot of times. Most of us are in front of people a lot. And then there's that moment where you have to stop and actually listen to the client or the employee or your spouse and hear the other side of things. So Grandma's lesson to me was, God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. You should listen twice as much as you talk. Grandma was a preacher's wife. And so she had to learn to listen, and she had to learn to be unbiased, and she was everybody's friend at church. But she went home lonely a lot because she couldn't have best friends from Granddad's church because she didn't want to discriminate one parishioner against another because she was the preacher's wife. So she knew a lot about listening and just absorbing what other people needed. And I think it makes a difference for us as leaders. Now, this is my dog, Angel. Angel taught me about communication. Angel was with me 16 years. I got her when she was that little bitty tiny pup like this. She was a stray in a cage. And a friend of mine had a veterinary office, and in that office I was helping her clean up the cages one Saturday morning because she was shorthanded that day. And I called her and I said, oh, there's this cute little white dog in the cage. Can I take him or her out? Or is she one of the parvo dogs? Because parvo dogs can't be mixed with the other dogs. And oh no, she just needs a home. And well, she's got one. We named her Angel because of her beautiful white coat, and she lived 16 years in this very hard day when we had to let her go. But Angel talked to me. Now, dogs don't have words, but I knew what she wanted or what she was trying to say to me almost all the time. How does she do that? Well, this is the 735-58 rule that you might have heard about from the UCLA did the study. You remember that? Only 7% of the message that we share comes from the words we say. It's the verbal message is tiny. 35% of it is the tone of voice, and then 58% of it is your body language. And the best, most fun example of this to me, beyond Angel, which I'll tell you stories about that too, is Joey on the TV show Friends. You know, when he said, "How you doing?" He wasn't asking how they were doing, and that's not what he wanted. But his body turned and his face turned up and the tone of voice was there, and they knew what he wanted. But the words were not the same when Ross said, "How you doing?" Right? That's my favorite story about that. That's not an animal story. Angel, though, could tell us, we would know if it was the water dish empty, although that one took a little work. We would know if a cat was locked outside. We would know if a bathtub was overflowing. We knew when it was bedtime because she was ready and she was taking us to bed with her because of the way her body language was and rounding us up. She would poke on us and push us and prod us. That dog talked to us if we listened. And if we listened with more than our ears, we watched. If we paid attention to which bark she was barking. Can't we do that with our people? Can't we pay attention to the person who says, "Yeah, I'm fine," instead of, "I'm great. If I was any better, I'd have to be twins"? There's a difference. And how do we convey our message? What are we saying? Are we accidentally making people think that we're not fine? I got in such a habit of going in high and strong at Luke for Frakes when I was the operations manager. I'd walk through the office, I'd say hi to everybody. I'm a morning person, so it was easy for me. But one day, for no particular reason, I was walking through the office and I just kind of walked through and went to my desk. I don't know, maybe I was late for a call or maybe I had a lot of paperwork, I don't know, I didn't do that. And like there was a buzz around the office. What's wrong with Lisa today? All I did was walk in. But I wasn't that usual high energy person. So that body language makes a difference. And if you don't tell the whole story to people, they will fill in the blanks for you. Be careful with the half messages. Be careful with saying things to people, "We'll get to that later," or "Oh, it's nothing," or "You better tell them something," because they're going to make up the stories for you. The other thing I like to mention about this 73558 deal is when you're on the phone, the number's something like 86% of your message is tone of voice, 84, 86. When you're using email, how much is effective there? You've got 7%. Worse with text, where we don't even use grammar. So maybe those things will change, but it'll be a very long time, because I'm going to go back to my first message. Humans don't change that much. So even though the younger generation is, doing what they do, and just like we did when we were young, they might come to the point at some point where they say, "You know what, I need to advance the way I have my relationships, the way I make my relationships. I want them to be longer term. They may or they may not. Those numbers may change. And there may come a day when texting and no grammar is 58% of the message. But right now, I don't think so, because I don't think humans change that much. I think they don't evolve that much, and they still need to build long-term relationships. So when you're trying to communicate, which is, in my opinion, after 33 years of doing this and being a manager, it is the most important thing we do. Effective communication. Look it in their eyes. Showing good, positive body language. Now, you guys teach, right? How many in here teach? Get in front of a classroom and teach. A third of you, maybe? So you know when the students are gone, right? They think you can't tell when they're like this. They don't think you know what they're doing. Or you know because of their body language. They slide down the chair. I've had students put their arms behind their head, lean back in their chair, and practically take a nap. I don't care. I'm getting paid the same whether they sleep through the class or not. But they should care. They should pay better attention. But you can see it in the body language. If you pay attention to that stuff with your employees, people you're consulting with, you might read something in body language that you wouldn't have seen before. You might see a flinch, we call it in sales. You might see the flinch and realize you better change your tactic or you're going to lose the sale. The other thing about communication that we talk about in sales, and I know Al teaches this, and some of you might, shut up sometimes. Just shut up. You're having a conversation, and you find especially if you're selling, trying to close the deal for a new consulting gig or whatever you're doing, you be quiet for a minute. Let them process it, let them think. Read their body language, know when it's time to let go for a minute, let them process.
How do you build the confidence not to say something?
Oh, it's so hard not to say something. You just want to fill that gap so bad. That dead air. You've all seen TV presentations of basketball games or baseball games, and every once in a while you'll hear someone. Dead air, dead air, dead air, dead air. Because they can tell on the radio that there's nothing happening. It's tough. But if you know that what you're presenting is the right thing for your client, and if you know that your price is fair, and if you know that what you have is what they need, and if you know that you have some kind of unique proposition in there, then just hush for a minute, let them think about it. Because I have seen it. In fact, I have turned away people who were trying to sell me something because they just talked right past the sale. I was ready to say yes 20 minutes ago, and they just wouldn't let me. Can I write you the check now? Because the other thing is setting the stage a little bit for conversations. I have been, I won't name names, but I have been in offices where I had an appointment, a meeting set, was sitting with a client or a boss or something, because it's happened more than once. Phone rings, guess what they do? Excuse me a minute. Now what's more important, the phone ringing or the human in front of you? It's not the phone unless you're about to have a kid or a kidney. You waiting on a kidney? Answer the phone, right? Otherwise, you know, the person in front of you is the most important. I've walked out of stores where I'm waiting to give them my money, maybe in hand, and they answer the phone. Really? Because, see ya, I can go buy this somewhere else. So think about setting the stage. Thinking about when you're sitting across from someone, and I don't care who it is, clear the stuff that's between you. Sometimes it's even better, especially if it's a difficult conversation. Think about your body language if you go around the desk and sit next to someone. I've never fired someone from across the desk. Sometimes the best conversations, or the best, most valuable conversations I've had with great employees who I wanted to learn what's next for them, going around the desk. Sit with them, go in another room, go have coffee. That desk is a barrier sometimes. And sometimes you want that. It's a power position, right? That's good, if that's what the situation is. So set the stage. Jasmine is my other dog I want to talk about just for a minute. I've got 18, 19, 23, I think, animals in these slides. We're going to get to 4 or 5 of them. I'm going to have to go pretty fast through some of them, but they're on the book. Jasmine taught me this. One of the things, keep the documentation up to date. And the reason Jasmine taught me this is because Jasmine was always busy. She was always running. She was a border collie. Border collies are always checking things, always looking, always making sure everything's good. Is everything fine? Everything fine? Everything fine? That was Jasmine, just crazy energy. So she taught me, always be checking on things, make sure. She was also very protective. And I think that's the other thing I would say about this slide is make sure you're protecting your folks. Make sure they feel protected by you. Make sure they want to hear from you because they know you're only looking out for their best interests. And in this group, that's preaching to the choir, so I'm going to move on.